The hall was filled with people, music, and soft lights, yet for one little girl, it felt colder than an empty room. She sat quietly in her wheelchair near the edge of the crowd, surrounded by movement but untouched by it. Laughter floated past her, conversations overlapped, and footsteps echoed on the floor, but none of it reached her heart. Every few seconds, someone's eyes drifted toward her, paused for just a moment, and then quickly turned away. Not out of cruelty, but discomfort. Not hatred, but uncertainty. Still, the effect was the same, she felt invisible. The music grew louder, signaling joy and celebration, yet she remained still, hands folded gently in her lap. Her eyes lowered, not because she was shy, but because she had learned that looking up often led to disappointment. She had seen this look before, the forced smile, the quick glance, the awkward silence. People didn't know what to say, so they chose to say nothing at all. In a room full of warmth, she felt alone. A few steps behind her stood her father. He had been watching quietly, noticing everything others ignored. He saw the way people avoided eye contact, how conversations shifted when they passed by her. He saw the small changes in his daughter's expression, the way her shoulders sank just a little, the way her smile faded when no one invited her to join. Each moment struck him deeply, but he stayed still, letting the scene unfold, understanding that sometimes pain reveals truth. This was supposed to be a happy day. A celebration. A moment meant to bring people together. Yet his daughter was being left behind, not by words, but by silence. And silence, he knew, could hurt more than rejection. The father's chest tightened, not with anger, but with resolve. He wasn't blaming the crowd, he understood fear often hides behind politeness. But understanding didn't make it acceptable. As the music continued, the girl adjusted herself slightly in her chair, pretending not to notice. She had mastered that skill, acting like it didn't hurt. Her father recognized that look instantly. It was the same look she wore after school events, birthday parties, and public gatherings. A look that said, "I'm used to this." And that realization was the heaviest of all. The room carried on as if nothing was wrong. But something was. A moment was being missed. A chance for kindness was slipping away. And in that silence, while everyone else looked away, the father made a quiet decision. This moment would not end like the others. What happened next would change not only how his daughter felt, but how everyone in that room would remember this night forever. The music slowed, shifting from loud celebration to something softer, almost hesitant, like the room itself was holding its breath. Conversations faded into murmurs. In that brief pause, the father moved. It wasn't dramatic. There was no announcement, no call for attention. He simply stepped forward, each movement calm but deliberate, as if he had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his heart. People noticed him, not because they understood what he was about to do, but because confidence has a quiet gravity. He stopped beside his daughter's wheelchair and knelt down so their eyes met. For a second, the world around them disappeared. He smiled, not the forced kind, but the reassuring smile she had known since childhood. The one that said, "You are safe. I'm here." He whispered something only she could hear. No one knew the words, but they saw the change. Her eyes widened slightly. A flicker of surprise, then uncertainty, then trust. Gently, he took her hands. His grip was careful, respectful, never rushed. This wasn't about proving anything, it was about presence. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others froze, unsure whether to look away again or keep watching. The father rose slowly, staying close, making sure she felt supported. With patient strength, he helped her lift herself just enough to sway with the rhythm of the music. It wasn't perfect. Her movements were small, uneven, real, and that's what made it powerful. The room grew quiet. No whispers now, no nervous laughter, just silence filled with emotion. People realized they weren't watching a performance, they were witnessing love in its purest form. A father wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was simply refusing to let his child be invisible. The girl hesitated at first, afraid this attention might hurt more than being ignored. But her father stayed steady, guiding her gently, matching her pace, never forcing her beyond what she could do. Slowly, her shoulders relaxed. Her grip tightened around his hands, not out of fear, but connection. For the first time that evening, she lifted her head. Someone in the crowd wiped away tears. Another person took a step closer. The discomfort that once filled the room was transforming into something else: respect, understanding, courage. In that moment, the father didn't just stand up physically. He stood up against silence, against fear, against the quiet habit of looking away. Without saying a single word, he gave everyone else permission to care. And as the music played on, it became clear, this was no longer just a dance. It was a turning point. For a few seconds, no one moved. The music continued softly, but the silence in the room was heavier than any sound. Then something shifted. It wasn't loud or sudden, it was gentle, like the first crack of light at dawn. One person stepped forward, then another. Eyes that once looked away were now fixed on the dance, not with pity, but with awe. A woman near the back pressed her hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. A man beside her lowered his head, as if ashamed he hadn't acted sooner. Slowly, people began to stand. The space around the father and daughter, once distant and cold, filled with warmth. They weren't being watched anymore, they were being supported. The girl felt it before she fully understood it. The air around her changed. The fear she had carried all evening began to loosen its grip. Her movements grew a little freer, her posture straighter. She smiled, not the polite smile she used to hide her feelings, but a real one. The kind that starts in the heart and reaches the eyes. Her father noticed instantly. His grip softened, not because she needed him less, but because she was stronger now. Someone joined the rhythm, clapping quietly. Another couple stepped onto the floor, careful not to interrupt, only to share the moment. The crowd didn't rush in, they flowed in, respectful, united. What once felt like a dividing line between us and her dissolved completely. The father looked around and finally allowed himself to breathe. He hadn't planned to change the room. He had only wanted to protect his daughter from another night of being unseen. But his small act of courage had done more than that. It reminded everyone present of something simple they had forgotten, that inclusion isn't complicated, it's a choice. The girl laughed softly, surprised by the sound of her own joy. For so long, she had believed moments like this were not meant for her. Yet here she was, in the center of it all, not because someone felt sorry for her, but because she belonged. The memory of being ignored didn't disappear, but it lost its power. As the song ended, the room erupted, not into loud applause, but into something deeper. People nodded to one another, shared quiet smiles, and wiped away tears they didn't bother to hide. This wasn't the kind of moment that needed cheering. It needed remembering. That night would be talked about for years, but not because of the event itself. It would be remembered because one father refused to accept silence as an answer. Because one child was finally seen. And because everyone in that room left changed, carrying with them a lesson they would never forget.